Hey guys, we should talk about this solar eclipse that is coming up on April 20th because it's got a lot of things happening at the same time. So I want to show you everything that you'll kind of want to know as this is unfolding. In case things get a little crazy, you'll know that this is aligned. This is something that is meant to be happening, or at least fits the description of the eclipse, so that you can have that peace of mind to be able to move along with whatever comes around for this eclipse and kind of use it with consciousness and with purpose, and to help yourself feel a little bit more in control during a time that is classically a time of releasing control. So I'm going to share my screen and show you on a really fun program what is going on with this eclipse that is, again, coming up on April 20th. So here we go. All right. And if you're wondering, this program is called Luna. It's a really amazing program. The chart is fun and interactive to work with. You can see all sorts of information that's really helpful. And especially for someone who's just really diving into the beginnings of working with a chart, this is a great program. It's also cloud-based, so you can pull it up anywhere. And yeah, there is a discount code in my link if you're interested in exploring it. One of the things I like about being able to use this is that we can actually go over here to this new moon, which means solar eclipse, and click on the sun, and it will get rid of all of the noise around the chart so we can focus in on this. We're going to be looking at some other things, so we'll clear this out in a minute, but this is where we want to focus first and foremost. What is a solar eclipse? It's a new moon, but it's when the sun and the moon are at a new moon to the point where they're at the same declination. So if we have the moon and we have the sun, and from Earth, they have the same apparent magnitude. So because the sun's so much further away, to us, they look about the same size in the sky. That's their apparent magnitude. And it's really unique that they have the same apparent magnitude for us, which is super cool. Because of this, we are able to have eclipses. So when we get a new moon, often it's like the sun's up here, the moon's down here. So the moon's just blared out by the sun, because you'd have to look directly at the sun to see the moon, and like, don't do that. But then you have a new moon solar eclipse, which is when they are at the same level. So it's called the same declination. They happen to come and cross at exactly the same right point at the same time. And that provides an eclipse. When we're looking at a chart, you'll know that a certain lunation, a new moon or a full moon, is an eclipse, because this node right here, the north or the south node, will be roughly 15 degrees, give or take, on either side of the lunation. So we see here that while this one is happening in Aries and the nodes are still in Taurus, they will shift in July. They are still close enough to this lunation for this to show that we have the declination of the sun and moon right aligned with each other, so that the moon will block out the sun, which is what gives us a solar eclipse. So that's how we know that this is a solar eclipse. It is happening in Aries, where the sun is exalted. It is happening very close to Jupiter, conjunction with Jupiter still, as the sun is moving away from Jupiter. Jupiter is still invisible because, again, same story. You'd have to look at the sun to see Jupiter, whereas before, just a couple weeks ago, you could look in the evening sky and see Jupiter and Venus. Now Jupiter has met with the sun and is being reborn in Jupiter's synodic cycle, which is the cycle that Jupiter shares with the sun, the seasons that Jupiter has, so to speak. So we can see that we have an eclipse and it's conjunct Jupiter. But then when we dive in a little bit deeper and look at some more things here, there's a lot going on. You'll also notice this eclipse is happening at 29 degrees. It's called the anaretic degree. It's also just because it's the last degree of a sign. And being that the sun is here, that means the sun is about to cross signs. So this is also the first day of Taurus season. Now, on the East Coast, you can see this is happening at around 12:12 in the morning. So at 12:12 in the morning, we have an eclipse, which means we're probably not going to see it where we are because the sun will be shining elsewhere. But we have the eclipse occurring, and then a couple hours later, the sun will move into Taurus. So when the sun moves into Taurus, and actually maybe I can play around with this and we can go a couple hours and click forward and show you. It doesn't take very long for the moon to get into Taurus, which is nice for the moon. The moon is exalted there. And then give it a couple hours, and the sun also by 6 in the morning will be in Taurus as well. So you can see this creates Taurus season for us. We move from Aries season into Taurus season, changes the dynamic of the sun and the moon at the same time. And they're still separating quite close to each other. So really, they're still pretty much eclipsing each other at this point. So we have this eclipse that starts in Aries and kind of transitions us into Taurus season, which is poignant, right? When a new season begins, when I do this in my monthly horoscopes for everybody, I look at the beginning of Taurus season and say, well, what does this say about how Taurus season is going to go? If this is the birth of the season, what's the natal promise or the story that this season is going to offer us? And what you see happening is when we come into Taurus season, for the East Coast, the sun is about to rise, which is interesting. Again, we're seeing that it's still pretty well eclipsed at this point. The moon would be considered exalted, but again, this is an eclipse. And I want to really talk about why we take eclipses so seriously. And to do that, I'm going to quote one of the medieval grimoires of astrological magic, because a lot of us like to work with the moon, and that is a form of intentional usage of astrology, which is very much astrological magic. And so when we look at pikatrix, who is a staple in the astrological magic community, we look at what pikatrix says about the eclipse. And when working with eclipses, you shouldn't. That's the long and the short of it. Do not work with an eclipse. Allow the world to click into place and reveal to you what it is going to do, and then work with what you are given after or through the eclipse. Because eclipses, according to pikatrix, affect the sun and the moon and other planets and influence them to the harm of the other composite bodies. That's bodies that are sort of incarnation like us. So pikatrix says, do not believe for a moment that the sun or moon receive any harm in their nature or accidents thereby. And we will call this an impediment of the heavens, so that you will understand that the reason that harm comes to animals, trees, and other composite bodies from eclipses of the sun, moon, and other planets happens because the four elements are altered, changed, and damaged. Now, there is even a footnote here that talks about one of the central principles of medieval cosmology was that destruction only happened in the realm of the four elements. So if the four elements are what came down to us and we make corporeal things with them, or we are made of them, the celestial realm is exempt from that. It's not really using that. It's exempt from generation and corruption, but life is a cycle of generation and corruption in this cosmology. The biggest point being that it's not fear-mongering that I'm trying to illustrate here. What I'm trying to say, and this is a little bit of a dramatic sentence to say it, but it's a warning saying, hey, don't work with eclipses. And they say that because nature is asserting itself in eclipses. Nature is forming itself. Nature is refining itself. And so we are among nature as often as we kind of forget that. And so it's really important to remember that stuff is clicking into place in a way that may be beyond our scope of understanding, because it's like when you have a strategy and the person in charge of the strategy knows everybody's role, or players on a field. The coach knows what every player is doing. Each player knows what they are doing, but the coach has the overarching scheme. So we're looking at a scheme coming into play here, and we want to make sure that we are understanding and learning what our role is in that play. And that's why it's not awesome to work with an eclipse, because you may overstep and you may try to do something that isn't part of the scheme or isn't part of the overall play, and it trips things up or could cause damage or accidents. Today, especially with this eclipse, I want to be clear about the potential of accidents, not to scare you, but accidents and surprises, so also really good things could happen. When we look at I'm going to go back over here and it'll bring us back to the eclipse chart really quickly. We also see that Mercury in Taurus is conjunct Uranus. So Mercury is talking to Uranus. They're scheming as well. They're pretty unpredictable in and of their own nature. And the very next day, we're going to notice Mercury is going to, throughout that day, on the 21st, but this is just easier to click to, will go retrograde at this degree. Still very close to Uranus and approaching Uranus. They don't quite meet, but they are within 2 degrees of each other. So we're noticing this unpredictability, this instability, really adding to the volume of the instability already illustrated by having a solar eclipse. Now, Basic things to understand about a solar eclipse. Solar eclipses tend to be more impactful on a leadership level. So this is something we might notice unfolding with people of leadership positions. This would be people in charge of things like countries, armies, or any kind of groups. It would be a boss of some sort, right? Whoever is in charge of groups of people. This was typically understood to be the king. And you always hear the story about during a solar eclipse, they would sub in a temporary king in case something happened that day, so that temporary king would receive the effects. Lunar eclipse are more of the people. And we will see a lunar eclipse happening later in the month as well on May 5th. So this is a time of really observing what's going on at the higher level and then reacting or choosing what actions you would like to take based on the new information that you receive from this eclipse. So again, it may not even be something that feels very personal in your sphere of influence or in your circle, especially if you check where Aries is in your chart. If it is an angular position, and that would be primarily in the 1st, 10th, 7th, and 4th house, you may notice it more closely in your circle, happening to you, to someone near you, in your career, at home, something like that. Still, I would not be afraid because, again, you already know that energy is coming and you will be able to roll with it. You will be able to accept what's happening a lot quicker because you know that there's the potential for something transformative to happen. Speaking of transformative, when we come here and we notice that the sun moves forward a little bit by hours, we'll put the sun forward into Taurus. So we get there and we notice that the sun is at 0 Taurus to square Pluto, again with the themes of transformation, right? So just knowing there's a lot changing around this energy. There's a lot changing. But you may be able to know a little bit of a preview to this if you were kind of journaling or noticing what was happening in your life around March 20th, because this is actually the second new moon in Aries that we're going to have in a single lunar cycle or in a single month, which is again unique. So the last new moon in Aries happened at the very beginning degrees on March 20th. And now the sun and the moon are at the 29th degree, tipping over into Taurus. So this is a time where a blue moon is known as 2 full moons in the same calendar month. This is a similar idea where we're getting 2 new moons in the same zodiacal sign in the same lunar cycle. So new moon to new moon, they're in the same sign. And we're seeing a lot of indicators that something surprising, unpredictable might happen at this time, and that it's something for us to observe, detach from outcomes, accept what is given to us, and then take action on after that. Maybe surrounding yourself with resources after that to make sure that you have the opportunity to feel comfortable again, that you have the opportunity to give yourself security. A lot of these Taurian themes that kind of capstone what comes after. And then as Mercury retrogrades, that gives us plenty of time. We have had all planets direct since the middle of January. This is the first retrograde we will have, and it's Mercury. So it's one that we are familiar with, and it's one that is a little bit more personal on scale for us. So this is going to give us the opportunity to slow down, to revise things, to really rework things that are going on. And it too is occurring in Taurus. So this gives us that opportunity in this same area of life to say, okay, I'm going to take my time with this. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to give myself the space I need to give. And I'm going to do this with intention, on purpose. And hopefully what I want for you is that this is an exciting change from beginning to end. But I truly believe and hold space that this will be something exciting in result, one way or another. Whatever is happening, it seems like it's going to be unlocking new potentials that you probably just didn't even know you were capable of before, and new opportunities for us to do things in the world that we didn't have access to before, that we weren't aware of. Again, looking at Taurus being resources and things, there may be opportunities for us to use resources in new ways and really begin this journey of the eclipses, as we said before, moving from Taurus into Aries. That's going to start a 1.5-year cycle of eclipses happening here. So we have this very first eclipse in Aries happening that we get to say, okay, this is setting the tone for a story that has a 1.5 years to unfold. And if you're interested in what this means for you personally, you can check out my month ahead video, the astrology overview and horoscopes for April. I do every single rising sign in there and I incorporate this into it. So you can get some peace of mind for what areas of life this may show up in for you, how personally you might feel it, or what you might notice. But my best advice for anyone who is experiencing this, and we all are, is simply to observe. We don't have to take action right now. We can observe the people, the interactions that we have, and then see what opportunities arise in the areas of our lives where Aries is most effective, and even looking at where Taurus might be in your chart as well. So, an affirmation to help you out through this is reminding yourself that I am loved and appreciated by those who see me and know me, and we naturally find each other. So again, naturally finding the people and the resources who are going to help you move forward and give you the best in life. And I really do truly wish that for you in every capacity. And I hope that we have really exciting things to talk about after this day, and that it moves us forward as a collective world with more intention and more passion than we may have noticed before. So if you want to work with me personally, of course, you can actually see what this means for you one-on-one with me in a consultation where you can book this through my website. I will never DM you for readings. And I would love to hash this out with you and come up with a strategy for you and with you in cooperation with your energies and your current intentions and goals and dreams. We can do that together. And of course, you can find me on social media at The Real Crystalline anytime you need to, where I will always be talking about these transits. I wish you the very best, and here's to an exciting time.